A little over 10 years ago, George Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney and gave up his creative control and financial control and executive control of his company. Now that it's been over 10 years, we've had a lot of Star Wars. We're going to look back on that monumental, just game-changing moment in film and TV history and maybe debate whether or not it was the right time and all those sorts of things. But welcome, everybody, to the Resistance broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Yeah, it's our discussion show. So we're going to get into it a bit later, talking about that move that George Lucas made in 2012, which a lot came with it, because I'll never forget seeing the 3D Phantom Menace release early in 2012, and they were supposed to do the rest of the prequels, and then before you know it, things changed, and away we go. But with me, as always, James and Lacey. I don't know if I said I'm John, but that is who I am. We have, it's going to be a good show today. So first off, I just want to say hello. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Another week.
Now, I didn't ask you guys on TRB Live on Thursday, but how was your 4th? Did you guys have a good time? All fingers? Everyone got their fingers? Yeah. All right.
I had like 4 events. Like I think we did a July 1st, a July 3rd, a July 4th, and a July 5th. Yep.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It had mostly to do with the fact that family was in town. So on the 3rd, we were celebrating my brother-in-law's retirement from the military. 36 years. So we had a surprise party for him and invited military buddies and family and other friends and things. So there was that happened on the 3rd. And then on the 5th, we were celebrating their kids' birthdays because they don't normally get to celebrate it with this portion of the family because they live far away. So they're like, one of their birthdays is July 4th and the other one is close enough that we're like, okay, yeah, we'll just do both birthdays on this night. And so another big family event, so.
Nice. Very good.
I did nothing. I got Five Guys over the weekend, which was pretty sweet because we decided it was just cheaper and easier to get burgers somewhere else than to grill them ourselves.
Right.
And then on 4th of July,
you can add A1 and jalapeno peppers and stuff.
Yeah, if you want that. And then on 4th of July, I actually made tortellini and oven roasted broccoli for dinner. And America.
Yeah.
But it is truly America because I had the freedom to choose what I wanted to eat. Anyway.
like a Mexican restaurant.
Which I would have loved Mexican, honestly. I just had tortellini and broccoli. I have this really good broccoli recipe. If anybody's interested, let me know. But the fun thing that we did was...
Who is it that loves broccoli?
Darth
One
Hurricane.
of our patrons. Yeah.
Dana Carvey.
No, Darth Hurricane.
Both Darth
a bunch of our neighbors got a bunch of fireworks, like a ton. So at first we put Daisy to sleep thinking like, oh, maybe she'll sleep through it. And she didn't. So we brought her downstairs and brought her outside with us. And we sat there on our front steps and watched our neighbors set off these gigantic, huge, totally illegal fireworks. But she loved it. She was obsessed. And then the next day she was going pow, 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 all day. So I thought it was a pretty good day.
Nice.
We sat down to watch fireworks because you can see them from our house. We sat down to watch fireworks and I told Bennett it's probably going to be maybe like a 20-minute show, or our bigger city does a 25-minute show or something. I was like, that's fine. I don't know what happened. I can only assume there was a malfunction, but there were fireworks going off for that event for an hour. They just kept going for an hour. I would say maybe like 40 minutes in, there was what could maybe be assumed like some type of final finale or something where there were a bunch shooting off at once. But then they kept going for another like 15, 20 minutes.
That's just
every once in a while there'd be some more. And it's like, are they seriously still going? So it ran for 59 minutes by my count from first to last firework.
Yeah,
I used to go down to the beach in Fairfield, Connecticut, because my parents grew up in Fairfield, but they just made it now that if you're not from the town, you can't see them anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's not
really?
very. That's not in the spirit, in my opinion.
That's very Connecticut for you, though.
Yeah. I was sick.
Get
most
off
of the
my
weekend.
beach.
I had another bug, and I was like, it's not feeling good. And then I finally turned it around. I was feeling better Sunday, and then, or Monday, and then Tuesday because I did work Monday. We went to my brother-in-law's, and he has an in-ground pool. We were swimming. The kids had a blast in the pool, and I got wasted. I was drunk because my brother-in-law who hosts, he's like, keep throwing them back. Let's go. I'm like, all right.
Oh my God.
What day was this?
Tuesday, 4th of July.
Oh, Tuesday.
So
Okay.
then
I was thinking it was Wednesday because then you're like, I signed us up for Threads.
No.
So here I am at my house, like classical music, cooking oven roasted broccoli, and John's like,
I was probably a quarter mile from your house at another house, obliterated. I was, just going for it. The kids were having a blast in the pool. I was in the pool, throwing them around, driving Daisy around in her little, like she could sit in this tube and like pretend she's driving in the pool. And then he had like these, the Fugazi like fireworks you buy at like Target or Walmart or whatever that the kids like them, But my wife, he had to drive us home, of course. So, so she gets home and on 4th of July at 10 p.m., I DoorDash Taco Bell. And I'm only saying that because I love our audience so much that I just want to be transparent, because we've all had those moments where we just like order something late and it's just, I've heard stories of people ordering stuff and passing out and not even getting it picking it up till the next morning. But I ate Taco Bell as the last thing I did on the 4th of July. And you're right, Lacey, when it comes to the freedom of choice, I exercise that freedom.
I was going to say you had Mexican.
But you know what's funny? People celebrate this idiot on Coney Island shoving 75 hot dogs in his mouth.
62.
Whatever it was. And they're like, oh, he's a hero. He's a champion. I ordered Taco Bell at 10 p.m. I think I'm the champion, especially because I am the Taco Bell champion of TRB.
It explains why the next day I was like, so how was your holiday? You're like, I need to go on a diet. I need to like
Did I say that?
Yes. And I was like, all right, okay. It was just one day off. But now I know.
It was a day. I went for it. It was a free day. It was a day of freedom.
Well, every beer is like a cheeseburger in calories.
I had a bunch of beers. Yeah. I had a cigar. It was a good day. But also I was, really in the pool, taking care of the kids. I was doing everything I was supposed to do.
You were wasted taking care of your kids in a pool?
No, at that point it wasn't. But nighttime, when they're sitting there in the blanket watching the fireworks, that's when it's really started setting in. But we're here to talk Star Wars, and I hope everyone else had a wonderful 4th of July. Obviously, if you're not in the U.S., I hope whatever you did.
Canada Day was over the weekend.
Yeah, I hope everyone is just doing well in general. I hope your summers are going well, and you're getting ready as the march to Ahsoka begins. I think we are launching the marketing campaign for Ahsoka since they're not. So we'll kick that going soon. But anyway, let's kick things off with our first segment of the day called Will of the Force.
I fear nothing, for all this, as the Force wills it.
Yes, the Force wills it. And we do this segment because it allows us to include our patrons. If you are a patron of TRB, you can submit questions there. And we're going to kick it off with one of our Spice Runners who asked us the question. It was the Fordworthian, a.k.a. Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
Our newest Spice Runners who asked the question. Ryan wanted to know, what is the future of Visions? There's been some great original content. Do you think we will see some of the characters make their way and expand into other shows and other content? A live action Lola, maybe, from Sith? Lacey, what do you think of Ryan's question here? Do you think there's any chance that they'll expand on some of the Visions content?
Ryan, great question. I am so pumped that you're talking about Visions, because I feel like you know, just like with season 1, it happens that Visions takes place, we blow through it, and then nobody talks about it again, except like every once in a while, like randomly a GIF will go out on the internet. So I'm so glad that you enjoyed it, because I really, really, really did. I loved this season, I think, more than the last season. But it was just such a wonderful kind of like taste of different cultures across the world in the lens of Star Wars. As for the future of Visions, I believe they're doing another season. If not officially announced, someone hinted at it at some point that they have more stories to tell, or it's already in production, but they haven't really explicitly said that. I'm trying to remember where I read that and or heard it from someone, but I don't think Visions is going anywhere. I think it's something that's a really cool way to celebrate Star Wars across the world. And also brings in new fans, because I think a lot of people, especially on the anime side with volume 1 of Visions, didn't really like Star Wars, but they're like, oh, but this is anime, I'll definitely check it out. So I think that these kind of animation, all the different types of animation that they do, these stories are bringing in people that maybe aren't interested in Star Wars, but are interested in just animation or different storytelling in general. As for the characters making the jump to the live action, big screen, I loved Lola and Sith. Sith was one of my favorite shorts from this past volume. I got to talk to Rodrigo Blas, which is on our YouTube channel. He was awesome. He's the writer-director. He hinted at having some more stories to tell with Lola, but I know that we heard that from creators with volume 1. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that transpire yet. I don't think we're going to see that. And the reason is because these stories aren't canon. They don't fall into the canon of Star Wars. So I don't think they're going to make that jump. Could they pull ideas from these stories, or maybe have characters in live action or new stories that are inspired by maybe some of these? Sure, that's a possibility. But I think currently right now, they're leaving these stories and characters and themes and stuff like that in these Visions kind of episodes, and they're not going to transpire elsewhere. That's just me.
Yeah, John, what do you think?
So Lacey, that was Jeff Snyder who said season 3 was in development.
Thank you. I couldn't remember who it was, but I should have assumed it was Jeff, because Jeff knows everything.
Yeah. So I think the day season 2 came out, he said it's in development.
Yeah, it's already in it. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't think they'll be expanded upon for the sake of respecting what they are. And I think the cool part about talking about Visions, when we did on the podcast and the videos and stuff, was the wonderment of, I wonder what happened to that character, or I wonder where that character came from. And I think the artistic impression is perfect for Visions, because like you said, Lacey, it's not beholden to canon. It's not that precious in that way. And people are allowed to use their imagination to say, I think this happened to Lola. I think as at the end of Screecher's Reach, maybe this happened afterwards, or, you know.
That one really stuck with you, huh?
It was very depressing. I don't like the idea.
It really stuck with you, because every time we talk about Visions, you bring up Screecher's Reach.
Yeah, that one, and the last one I liked a lot too.
Iu's song? Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. With Screecher's Reach, there's something about seeing somebody who looks like they're going to this point of no return, like there's no going back, and there might be regret. That bothers me. So anyway, I think Visions is exactly where it needs to be, and I think messing with that too much, like the Ronin book, is fine, but I think expanding about it too much, then it all of a sudden just becomes just another Star Wars project. And I like that it has its own thing where you watch this 8-9 minutes, whatever each episode is, and you get to, interpret, like, I think this character winds up going here or going there, and you can say whatever you want and believe and think whatever you want about it. And I think that's what's special about it. So I'm going to say no. But great question. Thank you.
For me, I think they're definitely going to continue to do Visions as they are. The one thing, doing a little bit of research here, is that the Ronin book is, I believe, the only piece of content that has been outside of Visions. or continuing any stories from that in any way. And what's interesting about it is you would think, well, maybe they'll do something like that for season 2 as well. Well, actually, Visions, the Ronin book was announced about 6 months before Visions season 1 debuted. So if they were planning to do anything with season 2, they would have already announced it, because the expansion for it came before they revealed the actual content.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about it is that I think that there is a good opportunity for people who like Visions to make an extra buck on them by doing a novel, or you could do a comic book, or you could use the Visions as the new fancy way of saying Star Wars not canon, and you could, if you wanted to, get some really good foreign authors to put together a comic series, a short run of that, and call it Visions, and let them tell their story in that way, and still have the Star Wars on it, or whatever. I think there's more that they could do with Visions, but the way that it is, because it keep in mind too, is based on a book, so it's not like it's just rebringing back Visions. There was the book that was like, these are all these ideas and concepts for Star Wars that never came to be, if I'm not mistaken. But I think there's more they could do, but unfortunately, I just don't think they are. I think they just want to keep it as a special promotional piece around a low time to kind of give a little bit of boost to Star Wars, whether that's on May the 4th or something along those lines. But unfortunately, I think that's what we're going to get out of Visions at the best. Let's move on to another question here that has to do with the upcoming Skeleton Crew. Do you think there's any chance that we will see Jude Law ignite and use a lightsaber in Skeleton Crew? John, will we see Jude Law ignite a lightsaber?
100%.
100%.
Lock. Book it. It won't be early. It'll be one of those things where things are really going down, and these kids are like, this guy's kind of helping us, but we think he's a little fugazi. And then all of a sudden, lightsaber. And he takes care of business to help the kids out. So I think, I'm kidding by saying 100% because I don't know. I'm just trying to be funny about it. But I do think we will see him use a lightsaber in this series.
All right. Lacey, what do you think?
100%.
And now everyone's gonna be like, Lacey said 100%. Yeah.
No, I actually genuinely did think this before you said that, but I'm glad you said it too, because it makes me feel more confident, because every time someone agrees with you, you're like, yes. We talked about this on the Thursday episode about Skeleton Crew, and his comments, and how the writer of Entertainment Weekly, EW, had said something about him using the Force in the trailer, and I completely, or them hinting at it, should I say. And I had completely forgotten about that, because just so much happens at Celebration that you get hit in the face with, that you just, we have said it before, that we wish they released that stuff after the fact so other people can see it. And then not only that, you can go back and reference it. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate the writer putting that in there, but I think he has a Jedi look to him. You know what I mean? He's Jude Law. He's just very kind of noble looking, and he's there to help the kids. It's interesting because he has made comments where they think, when he's acting, the kids are like, is he mad? And it's no, he's just doing his job.
Yeah.
So, there have been moments where I was like, is he a bad guy? I don't think he is. I think he is a Jedi, and I think he's gonna ignite a lightsaber. I think this show is only going to be better with a lightsaber. I think anytime you can add a lightsaber into Star Wars, it just adds a different type of happiness for me. Because despite what people say, I really do think Star Wars is about lightsabers and family and, finding who you are. But lightsabers and stormtroopers and vehicles and stuff kind of make it what it is. And that noise is unbeatable. So the moment that he does it, it's going to be so hyped. It's going to be so awesome. And it really does explain his excitement to take the role. I think. Because it's one thing for like a Woody Harrelson to be like, oh, I'm being this like kind of scoundrel guy. Like he was basically playing himself, and or he was playing Haymitch from Hunger Games. Whereas Jude Law saying like, hey, I'm taking this role. If you get offered to be a Jedi in Star Wars, I mean, we've heard the Acolyte people talk about it. You're not going to say no to that. So I'm going to say yes. I think you will.
I actually agree with this. I think it would make a lot of sense to have the kids have this person who's looking out for them actually be a Jedi and not be like a Sith who's trying to, turn them or make them dark or something. That being also said, his mysteriousness could be just simply fact that this takes place, as far as we know, in The Mandalorian, sort of 7 years after Jedi. It's that sort of like, it's that time frame there. And I know you can play with ages, but he's 50 years old. But if you start to put together some pieces there, he'd be about maybe 10 or so when Order 66 happens. So he might be old enough to remember being a Jedi, and then he's been living on his own.
Did they say how old he is?
No, Jude Law is 50. So I'm just saying you have someone who's about 50, let's just say, assuming he's human or something, in the time era of Mandalorian, it would put him about 10 years old, and he could say like, oh, I remember the Jedi. I'm something else or something, but he still has his lightsaber. He still sort of grew up on those morals and things like that. He could maybe still call himself a Jedi. It kind of gets interesting when you start thinking about, well, how does that all tie in with Luke and Ahsoka and other characters that are in this time era now? He might just be able to be his own force using person, with a lightsaber, but I definitely think the lightsaber is happening. So I think we're all in agreement on that one. Coming up next on Will of the Force, we have another patron submitted question. This one is coming from Commander Ian Thompson, and
what's up, Ian?
Commander Ian Thompson wanted to know, given his work on season 3 of Mando, will ILM legend Phil Tippett play a role in the production of any of the upcoming Star Wars films? Lacey, this is back to you on this one. What do you think about Phil Tippett being involved in future Star Wars projects, specifically the films?
Hey, Ian. Great question. So this is going to come from a place of like me wanting something over like if it's actually going to happen or not. So I'm on the side of like Phil Tippett is a legend, and not just Star Wars, but in Jurassic Park and all these other movies that we know and love for having like practical creature type stuff. So I want him to play a role in the production of any upcoming Star Wars films. And he did have stuff to do, obviously, in the sequel trilogy with TFA, and has been working with The Mandalorian with Jon Favreau. But the thing there is that Jon Favreau and in the previous case, J.J. Abrams are people that know of Phil and want to work with Phil and know of his history and his impact and innovation in his kind of creature shop and practical effects. So I guess my question would be, if I was going to phrase this with a question, would be like, do the people that are working on the new movies know Phil and know of Phil and want to work with Phil? Because what we've seen with Star Wars films and television projects in general, any Star Wars project really, is that people tend to want to work with people they want to work with. Especially Jon Favreau. He's like, I got a guy, I know a guy that would be perfect for this, whether it's an actor or a creature person or whoever. He'll find that person to work with them. So from a place of me wanting Phil to have some type of interaction with Star Wars, I would say yes. But realistically, Phil is getting up there in age. I know he's overseeing his own company and productions on his own. It seemed to me like, especially with The Mandalorian, he was doing it as like a, hey, we're bringing him in because he would be really good at this and he would enjoy doing it. And he worked on, I think, season 2. Also, he did like the junkyard type scenes with Bill Burr's character. But I don't see him doing any Star Wars films because, Lucasfilm does have their own creature shop and their own stuff there that Phil doesn't work for. So unless they're doing something specifically in the aesthetic of what Phil does, which is like kind of like that claymation look, I would say no.
He's currently 71.
Yeah.
So he would be 72 or 73 while working on that project.
It really depends on the needs of the project is basically what my answer boils down to, because if they're doing the creature stuff, they have their own department that does that. So they brought him in as a consultant for the Dejarik board, and then stuff with the Mandalorian. Like I said, like the Junkyard or with Mandalore, he was brought in as like a consultant outside vendor.
Right. Yeah, I think Lacey's got the right answer on this, which is why I'm going to agree with that and see what John also has to say. Do you think there's any chance that we're going to get Phil Tippett involved in the new Star Wars movies?
No, I don't think he has interest in that anymore. I think with him, a lot of it was working with his friends. And, you know, you watch Light and Magic and you hear him talk about how much he loved working with Dennis Muren and all those guys, and how much it meant to him and how much fun he had doing it. And now it has moved on to a new generation. So to me, this question is like asking, will George Lucas come back and write Star Wars or direct Star Wars? It's the same feeling for me. He recently put out his own stop motion movie, Mad God, about a year ago. He wrote, directed, did the visual effects, did everything on it. Very low budget. I still haven't seen it. I want to. I'm just not sure where I can view it. And then everything else he's done to this point has been consulting. He consulted on the Jurassic World stuff. And that's a loose term. That could just mean, hey, can you
do the dinosaurs look legit?
Can you look at this real quick for a day? And then they get to slap Phil Tippett's name on there, and people like us are like, oh, Phil Tippett,
Dinosaur supervisor.
Yeah, his last big thing was being a visual effects supervisor for the Twilight movies, which I didn't even know until I, saw this question and looked it up. But
it's probably makeup related, I would assume, or like the movements of the werewolves and stuff.
Yeah, something like that. Probably the transitions from werewolf to human, and vice versa. Yeah,
he had a whole thing in ILM. Was that not him that was talking about the process of like how they used to do it versus like the visual effects? And he's like, I'm out of the job, and he is like trying to.
That was Light and Magic too.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah,
during
it was a kind of a
era.
hard transition. Yeah, to see his career maybe going out the window or whatever.
He became more of a supervisor and like the eye test and like, will this pass the eye test?
Just like the body movement of things usually is what he's an expert on.
Right.
Yeah.
And he had still even built models that weren't necessarily going to be animated as models, but to give Spielberg and those guys an idea of like how those things should move on a kinetic standpoint.
Right.
But long story short, I don't think that's anything of interest to him. Even with the Mandalorian, he wasn't like hands-on or anything. It was his studio and some, ideas that he had and that sort of stuff. So I, of course, would love it. I think anyone would to have any of those guys back and involved. But I think that time has passed for Phil Tippett. For him, if he ever said, I want to come back, they'd be like, can you be here yesterday? Sure. But yeah.
One last thing to add to that too is that if you are interested in watching Mad God, it is a Shudder original. So if you subscribe to the horror streaming service Shudder, that's where you can find it.
Oh, okay.
It was exclusive to that.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Platform. We have one last question for Will the Force, and it's: will one of the kids in Skeleton Crew be revealed to be Force sensitive? John, you want to take this one first? What do you think?
I think so. I think that would pair nicely with if Jude Law obviously has some sort of Force sensitivity that he senses it in one of the kids, or they sort of discover it on their own. And I'm not saying like a Force Awakens like Rey, like this sort of chosen one thing, but and I don't mean that this kid's going to become a Jedi or anything, but I think that would be pretty cool if we found out one of these 4 kids, on this adventure, something connected with them. And also just from the spirit of George Lucas creating these stories, like anybody can be a Jedi, and Luke Skywalker is a farm boy and then he becomes this big galactic hero. I like the idea that this show's about these 4 kids in this impossible situation. They're trying to get home, and one of them happening to be Force sensitive. My mind is saying that's more likely than none of them. I'd be perfectly fine if none of them were. Completely fine, but I just have a feeling that'd be a pretty cool sort of reveal, and it could even be something that's revealed and then it ends that way, and use, like I said about Visions, use your imagination to see where that character goes moving forward in the galaxy, because it's a vast galaxy. But I think that'd be very cool. So I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say no, actually. I think that if they give one of the characters the ability to use the Force, it could pull away from Jude Law's character as being like, he has that power, and that's what's so amazing to the 4 kids. One of those kids would have to be like, I've moved stuff before, it's not that big of a deal or something. And I tend to think that when you usually put a group of kids together, you want to usually play to stereotypes of like what that could be, that character, sort of like the Ninja Turtles or whatever. Like, I think you'll have a kid who's good at technology. You'll have another kid who's like maybe shy and comes into themselves. You'll have a natural leader. And I don't know that any one of these kids in particular will be the one that has the ability to use the Force, or would be someone who, I mean, maybe if it's like at the end of the season and it really doesn't have much to do with that season in particular, they could say, and, that kid, actually might be able to be trained by Jude Law's character. And that could be cool, if they go that for the next season or something. But I'm going to say that the 4 kids have their own grounded, unique abilities, and not, and then they are approached by the wizard. And that's what's special about him. So Lacey, break our tie. What do you think?
Well, I think if this show was being phrased as Stranger Things, but Star Wars, you'd have to have one kid that has special powers, like Stranger Things. So it's not like they said, oh, it's Goonies in Star Wars. They said it's Stranger Things in Star Wars. So to me, that says someone has a power. I think it's going to be a case of either the main character or the best friend of the main character feels misunderstood, and that's what drives them to leave and like run away. And then it's a big misunderstanding and they get into more trouble. But the misunderstanding is they don't even understand their own powers, and they don't understand what's happening to them. Kind of like a puberty type thing. Like, nobody understands what I'm going through. And then Frozen. They run into, then they run into, Jude Law, who recognizes it, understands it, and tries to help them. And through his guidance, the kid, whoever it might be, realizes it's not a bad thing. It's okay to appreciate and accept who you are. And then also the things you can do with these powers that are good. You don't have to hide from who you truly are. I think that this one or the lightsaber one could be a good pie bet. If I'm being honest.
I thought you were out of the game.
Well, I think I'm right on both these questions. So it's different when you feel like you're really right.
Yeah, but you're answering the same
So you're
thing.
asking which one would be willing to make the pie bet?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What?
Because you're saying you're solid on your answers and you think it would make a good pie bet. So you're asking which one of us would be willing to take that bet.
I couldn't take it because I'm agreeing.
It would literally be John and I versus you, James, because you are the one that disagreed with both these questions.
No, he said yes to the lightsaber.
I said yes to the lightsaber.
You said no but you said yes to the lightsaber, no?
We all said yes to the lightsaber.
Oh,
We all
okay.
said yes.
I couldn't remember. But I'm just saying in general, the questions would be a good pie bet because that's kind of like this or
this
that.
This one would. This last one would, because there's valid. I think everyone made a valid case, but it would come down.
I think at the end of the day, I feel like we might end up with one of those things where like it's sort of like Finn or something, where you might be like, well, he was and he wasn't. I don't know.
Well,
you
Finn
said
was.
He wouldn't. You said
Finn was. Are we pretending Finn is? It's a gray area now? Is that what we're doing?
What?
I'm saying that some people say that Finn, they didn't pick up that he was Force sensitive when they watched the movie.
That's their problem.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, I don't want to end up in a debatable thing where we're like, well, they sort of like sensed it, but is that like Leia in Empire, where like she's sort of sensing it, but she's not really like a Jedi or a Force user?
We're not saying Jedi.
I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
I think
you don't want to make the bet. I see what you're saying.
I don't like making bets. I don't have anything that's like
His palms are sweaty. Mom's spaghetti.
I'm just saying, I don't think that's a question that could be like, it could be 100% yes or 100% no, but I think there's a lot of room in the middle ground that one of those kids could do something where like whoever wants to win would be like, that's force sensitivity. And it's like,
James, I don't think they're
arguably,
ever going to leave it open-ended if someone's force sensitive. I think they're going to be pretty straightforward if someone is on with the force.
In other words, you'll be able to definitively tell
Yes.
that person
100%.
moved those rocks without their...
And if there's an episode that might be like, maybe they're going to answer it by the end of the season if the kid is force sensitive or not. There's no way they're going to leave that open-ended.
And speaking of which, we do have the cashing in of the pie bet video coming from London.
I'm slacking. That's my bad. I have nothing.
I saw a picture. Wait, where did I see this picture? I forget where it was posted, but there's a great picture of us after, and I have my arm around Lacey, and she's just like,
I tried to do it just now. I got told no.
well, there's time, but all right, James, what else you got?
Nothing. So if we want to wrap up Will of the Force, we can move on to the next section, which is led by Lacey. What do you got?
All right, guys, it's time for the Patreon pod race. All right, guys, there are lots of ways you can support us. You can like this video, comment, subscribe on YouTube. We're getting there. We're getting there to 100,000, right, John?
Oh yeah, I'm taking my measurements.
Like 98,000 left to go, but whatever. We're growing our community there. We really appreciate it. As you guys know, we started over a new channel this past year, so any subscribe or like helps us. So if you liked us at the previous channel, if you could now like us here, it would really mean a lot to us. But on top of that, you can follow us on all the social channels at TRB Podcasts, where that's our handle on everything. So if you're looking for us, just search that. You can also follow us on the audio platform, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a review if you have a chance. Lets us know how we're doing and helps people find us and helps us grow the community. But if you want more than that and you want to be a part of the resistance and support what we're doing here and what we're trying to build, you can head over to patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Starting at just $5 a month, you're saying, hey, I want to be a part of what you're doing here. I want to be part of the team. And you get access to exclusive content. We do live streams, weekly videos, polls. You get Discord access at certain tiers and much, much more. As you go up in the tiers, you get more kind of perks and cool things that you get to engage with us and be a part of the show. So this is another segment that we take take input from people from Patreon. So I want to say thank you first to our Spice Runners and Generals, who in this segment get to answer a question and then give their answer. Or yes, we ask them a question, they give their answer, and then we talk about it. So thank you to those generals: Carmelo, John RISI, Jetta Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, Nick KRATZ, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, Danny, Mike Rumore, Matt Heath, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Aaron Allington, Micah Harrison, Colin Colmer, Jolton Jedi DiMaggio, and Diana. Thank you so much. And to our Spice Runners: David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gelner, Dave Hornack, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, Michael Fry, and the Fort Worthian, aka Ryan. Thank you so much. This week, we have the famous Obi-Wan Kenobi, David Probus, one of the coolest fans out there for Star Wars, and we're lucky to have him in the Resistance. And we asked him, which of the three new live-action Star Wars series, Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte, are you most eager to see and why? So, David, take it away.
What's up, TRB fam? It's your boy, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Spice Runner Graybeard here, David Probus. And I've been thinking a lot about upcoming projects for Lucasfilm, and I'm in the middle of a Rebels rewatch at the end of Season 2 where Ahsoka fights this guy right here, also signed by Demetrius Bistrevsky, the performance actor from Obi-Wan Kenobi. Really cool guy. And, you know, just my thoughts and stuff. I was not at Celebration, as you know. I was unable, we have not been able to see the Acolyte footage or anything like that. We also have not been able to see much on Skeleton Crew. And I'm a visual guy, and so I have seen visuals for Ahsoka. I love Ahsoka. I love her character. I love her arc. So I am very much excited for Ahsoka. Not to say I'm not excited for the others, but I can only go by what I've seen and the information that I have. And I'm looking forward to Ahsoka. So that's my answer. Obi-Wan Kenobi out.
Nicely done, David. Thanks for being on the show. John, what'd you think?
The artist formerly known as General Greybeard. I mean, you have a great point about your answer. You haven't seen the footage from Skeleton Crew or the Acolyte, so you're leaning toward Ahsoka. And I love that you got the Vader figure there, and you had one of the stunt guys signing it. It was very cool. Mm-hmm. How tall was that guy? He had to have been like 6'5", 6'7". Those guys are always just beasts. But yeah, so it's cool that you already got your rewatch going. I love seeing that people are talking about that. I'm slacking. I got to get in the mix and start my rewatch. But good answer. I like that you're also saying Ahsoka, because we were just recently talking about, like, has there been a mass sort of lead into Ahsoka so far? When is that going to pick up? So hearing you, who's a big Star Wars fan, saying like, no, yeah, I'm ready. I'm jazzed. I'm ready, hyped up for Ahsoka. Makes me feel good. So I like your answer and appreciate that. And I like that you said Obi-Wan Kenobi out. So thank you for all your support, buddy. It's always good to hear from you. And every time you pop in the chat, always brings a smile to my face because you're a good dude. And thanks for all the support, pal. Talk soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think David's really keeping us grounded here because, like, even Will of the Force had 2 questions about Skeleton Crew, and the 3 of us are sort of discussing it based on the footage and the trailer that we've seen. And we have this, like, kind of, looking at it differently than I think the mass majority of people. So that's absolutely fair, David, that, a lot of people haven't seen that yet. So the thing that is next on the radar is Ahsoka, and that's the next project coming up. There's a lot to be excited for with the stuff with Rebels and all that. And we're a little bit spoiled having been there and seen this other thing and says, oh, the tone of that, or the darkness, or the way that it's shot, or the actors, the costumes or something, they all look really cool. It's like most people can't get excited about that. They haven't seen it yet. So it's a good answer, and I'm glad that you said it. Like I said, always keeping us grounded. Thank you, David, for being on the show.
Thank you so much, David. I agree with your answer. I think Ahsoka looks pretty awesome. If it makes you feel any better, I don't even remember the footage that we saw because it was so long ago. And they show it so quickly, maybe twice, and then that's it. You never see it again. So no hurt feelings. I just remember glimpses of things, people's faces and stuff, but I couldn't tell you a shot by shot.
I forgot 5 minutes after. I was just like,
so much. So don't feel bad, but we're so hyped for Ahsoka, and I can't wait to watch that show. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Rosario Dawson back as Ahsoka. I loved her in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett as Ahsoka, and I think she's done an amazing job. So I'm also partially really pumped for Dave Filoni. What a career. What a journey that guy's been on.
What a character arc.
Yeah. What a journey for Dave Filoni that he's here. And you could see it at a celebration when they announced his movie and everything. He had tears in his eyes. He had tears in his eyes at the celebration stage when he was talking about it. He's just at a point where he's he can't believe he's gotten to here. And Ahsoka is his girl. So I'm excited to see that come into fruition for him.
Before we move on, just for a little more hype for anyone watching the video version of the podcast, James, can you give us a Hera Syndulla impression, please, real quick?
This?
Yeah, turn to the side, please. Yeah, and look straight ahead.
Ahsoka does that too in all the shots too. You look at Hera.
I thought I was looking at Hera Syndulla. I can't believe it.
Anyway, David, you're the best. We wait for the day when we get to, high five you and give you a hug in person. So
yes, dude.
Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon. And now we're going to go, John.
All right. Discussion time. What if George Lucas waited to sell Lucasfilm?
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
All right. So we all know how the story goes. big announcement, fall of 2012. George Lucas sells Lucasfilm to Disney for over $4 billion. Kathleen Kennedy, who had been with Lucasfilm recently, gets shifted into the executive role as president, taking over for George Lucas. They announced the new trilogy, 7, 8, 9, all that stuff. Everyone, trepidation. I remember, like, I went back to my Facebook post. I was like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this. Why are they going to do this? And then,
you were one of those people?
I was nervous.
Dun,
yes.
dun, dun.
I was absolutely nervous. And then you start hearing the buzz that Harrison Ford's coming back and Mark Hamill and stuff, and I start getting excited. And you see like the set builds of the Millennium Falcon. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
They're doing it.
Yeah. So, but I just kind of wanted to toss this question out there because now that it's been over 10 years, and I'm not, to be clear, I don't want this to be one of those like, oh, his movies would have been like this. So, like, we've talked about all that stuff. I just mean, if he waited, how would it have been different in terms of the company and the fan, reception of it? And my point being, I guess to start things off is, if he didn't sell it and he was involved with the sequel trilogy and then sold it thereafter and worked with Kathleen Kennedy in a, not here's the baton, you take over now, but here's the baton, let's hold this together and go through some stuff, and then you take over, would it have been a softer landing and would Kathleen Kennedy been less vilified? Because now people can say, BCAD, BBY, ABY, before Disney, after Disney. Whereas if they blurred those lines a bit and George, was more involved, because we'll never forget that interview where they're both sitting at that round table, and she's talking about George's ideas, and he's talking about, what Star Wars means and what it's all about. And then obviously it turns out they didn't use his treatments. If that existed where he's still involved, Disney owns the company, but George Lucas is transitioning, a soft transition out, I think it would have been better overall for fandom. I think it would have been better overall from a PR standpoint for Disney. And I think George Lucas probably would have been more at peace because he could have been involved with telling his stories of what he wanted to close out this saga, so to speak. So I'm just starting it there. I'm not saying this has to be an hour discussion or anything like that, but the thought crossed my mind when I thought about like how much just people like take that easy route to, oh, when did that come out? Oh, when Disney did it? So it wasn't George Lucas? Crap. It's crap. And just like with Indiana Jones coming out, all these people saying this movie stinks before the movie comes out. And like on our videos, posting things that weren't even true about the movie. I just think that it made it easy for people who wanted to hate it. So what do you guys think? If it was more of an ease in and he was involved, I think it would have been a better choice. I'm not saying he should have done it. George Lucas can do whatever he wants. But looking back, do you guys agree with that, or do you think it doesn't matter?
I think it's tricky because for me, I would have to look at all the facts of what he was promised or what discussions were had. Like, I know from personal kind of friends and stuff that have done big business acquisitions or big business agreements where they sell their company or something that they're passionate about to someone else, and then it doesn't go the way they planned it because initially what they were talked into isn't what transpires. So I guess for me, the question would be, what was he promised before he sold? Because to me, like you said, John, he had this very kind of optimistic, like, oh, I'm going to give them my stories and they're going to continue this on and my legacy continues far past me. But I'm at the point where I'm done, but my characters will continue on. And, despite what anybody thinks about J.K. Rowling, she does talk about how with Harry Potter, those characters live in her head. It's something that she's constantly thinking about. And I get that for any author who creates these kind of very broad, expansive worlds that are responsible for such an impact on pop culture and storytelling and like just the way things have impacted people's lives. Like Harry Potter and Star Wars are similar in that way. Like there's whole generations that have grown up with those things. With Star Wars, obviously more so that people have grown up for 40 plus years. But I think the hard cut and the treatment of, oh yeah, these were your characters. Yeah, they're not anymore. We're going to throw out this treatment and not use it, is what kind of, I think, set that ball in motion, so to speak, of, oh, he didn't get what he was promised, which then leads people to assumptions. You know, how many years later? What year are we? 10 years ago? 10 years
11,
later,
almost,
11
yeah.
years, where people are like, oh, that's not what George wanted, because technically it's not. He wanted them to use the outlines for the movies that he laid out to tell the story, and they didn't use those. So it's just interesting to me that people make that argument, but then at the same time have hated him for a very long time with the prequels and whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you got to take everything with like, okay, well, what is the truth? But I think there is I wouldn't say bitterness is the right word, but there's definitely something to George where he feels slighted. I genuinely think that, because the only time I've ever seen him enjoying himself talking about Star Wars in recent years was the clip they released of him talking to Dave Filoni about the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I agree.
That is the only time.
That 60 Minutes interview, he's clearly he got pretty raw about it. So
yeah, I mean, he even like, what did he say about Mickey Mouse? He was like, Mickey Mouse is slavery or something. I don't remember.
He called them white slave owners or something. I don't know what he said. Something like that.
Something very not good, which you can't look at that interview and go, oh yeah, he's cool with it.
Well, George Lucas always hated big studios. Like it's pretty clear he
still sold it to them though. That's the other piece of this. Is like,
well, he was offered the CEO position at Disney and he turned it down at one point too.
Right.
But James, let's bring you in here. Do you think more of a less hardened handover would have helped things overall? Not necessarily from a movie creation standpoint, but maybe just perceptions and all that sort of thing.
It's a huge hindsight question.
Yeah.
Because to me, if you sort of look back at where George was at the time in 2012, he's thinking, I did the prequels and I'm really proud of them, and they didn't get received well at all. And we were starting to get to that point where they were coming back.
Did the Clone Wars?
Yeah. And I think he did this, he did that thing with Cameron, where he was talking about how, you know, he had this idea and stuff, and he goes, I think my fans or Star Wars fans would have hated it, because I think what he was in that time period, he was thinking, this is what I would do with Star Wars, but I know if I do that, maybe it would have been great, and maybe we would have accepted it 10 years after he did it or whatever. But I think that when he's in that mindset, he says, the only direction I can think to take this franchise, the way I would do it, if I was going to do it, I think it would hurt my legacy more than help it, especially since they didn't like the prequels.
That's a good question you bring up, because I don't know who knows the answer to this, but I wonder how much from a public praising situation George Lucas cares about his legacy, because he always seemed to be like, I'm making the movies I want, and
everyone cares, even when they say they don't. They do.
Yeah,
it's human nature to care. You can't. I get it. It's like easy to be like, I'm above this, but even the most kind of tuned off person, I would say like a Martin Scorsese, still probably reads
he
reviews.
Was hurt by the prequel backlash. I think he was pretty vocal about that hurt him.
Right.
So I think that's the thing, is like, I think when you have someone who's going to do whatever they're going to do, that's one aspect of it. But knowing that it's like, it's going to, you know, like hurt you, and like people are not going to like you, and it's going to be a bad decision. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. I think he was just really on the fence with it at the time. And he was pretty convinced. He'd convinced himself that if I did future Star Wars movies, people are probably not going to like them. And then so he says, all right, so then I just won't make them. And then he starts thinking, well, then that means that I'm never going to have the opportunity to see what Star Wars becomes because I hold the rights to it, and they're never going to do anything with Star Wars until I'm gone.
And he also
I
wanted
think he came to terms with
all his employees to still have work. That was a big reason too.
Right. Yeah.
And he donated a lot of the money. People think he just I took $4 billion. He donated a lot of that money
and built the museum that he's building.
Yeah. So I kind of think that like in retrospect, like I don't think it was like a bad decision on his part. But the real conversation being more like, had he been more confident in, or maybe exactly, as we were kind of discussing, like the, I'm going to do it anyway attitude. He's like, it's my money, you know, I'm going to make the movie that I want to make and I'm going to release it. If people don't like it, people don't like it, whatever. If he did do that and maybe worked with Disney on it, I think that there's a good possibility that it could have gone a little bit better, probably just simply because of the George would have maybe seen a vision a little bit differently or something. I don't know. It's tough to say.
I think this scenario,
but he's still working with Disney, who's like, let's monetize it and make it big and whatever.
Yeah. I think this scenario, in my opinion, in retrospect, now it's easy to be retrospective and like point out things that were good and bad. So I understand that this is coming from that perspective. But if he sold the company, but there was the negotiation that he got to finish just the Skywalker saga with Disney, but it's Lucasfilm and he's in charge and does 7, 8, 9. And people see that George Lucas made 7, 8, 9. I don't want to get into the weeds about the story and the treatments and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And people see that Disney puts out George Lucas oversees full creative control, his 7, 8, 9. Does that give more public trust to Disney for the other stuff going forward, knowing they put out George Lucas's 3 to close out that story, Skywalker saga, done. Then George rides off into the sunset. And people can say like, well, all right, Disney did these George Lucas movies. We're going to give them more of the benefit of the doubt here. We're not just going to go into auto hate mode. We're not going to turn all on Kathleen Kennedy. That's sort of the smoother transition I'm sort of talking about. Like, give him those 3. They would have, like, say they came out every 3 years, like his other trilogies. So say like 2015, 2018, 2021. We're talking about 2 years ago would have been done. George Lucas is in his mid 70s. Then he leaves because he was like 68 when he sold it.
100%.
I think looking back, that was probably the better move. And I love the sequel trilogy. So don't look at me and think like, oh, he's just looking to
because I don't
do the George Lucas stuff.
He didn't go to the Last Jedi premiere, right? And he didn't go to Rise of Skywalker premiere. He only went to TFA as like a see ya, and then he went to Solo.
And he did the 40th anniversary celebration in Orlando.
Right. But I'm saying,
and it's not Star Wars, but he did go to this Indy premiere too. Right. So there was some like handoff of my characters, and I'm okay with what Disney did with it.
Yeah.
It seemingly he only went to the stuff that either Harrison was involved in or his character was involved in with Solo.
Well, yes, because the Solo movie was his idea.
Right.
So that was like,
yeah.
But I don't know. I just think, and it's like I said, it's very easy to play the Monday morning quarterback and like look back. But I think if even I would love to like even hear him talk about this candidly and say like, you know what, I wish I held on a little longer, you know, because like you said, James, maybe people would have hated them, but you know, in time, people freaking hated the prequels. I think people need to remember that.
They did.
Like even like. There were parts of the prequels I was like, oh man, and it's like you have a hard time defending them to your friends and all that stuff.
I mean, there's still stuff in the prequels that I don't like.
Yeah, it's rough. The love story, the dialogue, it's rough. But people come around to it because that trilogy belonged to a certain generation of kids who are now older and have the voice. And the same thing would happen with the sequel trilogy, and the same thing would have happened to George Lucas's sequel trilogy. But at least it would have been George Lucas told his story, the 9 movies. there it is, and it would have been nice, neat, tight. Put it in a box. There's your George Lucas saga. Then Disney, who did those, gets to go on and make your Rogue One and all your new movies and stuff.
They could have also been doing it at the same time.
Yeah, they could. You're right.
Disney is, they do episode 7 and then they make a Rogue One, and it doesn't have George Lucas involved in it, but we sort of see, oh, well, that was cool too,
Yeah.
But but then we get the George Lucas one again with episode 8 or whatever. And actually, I think like one way to really grasp this for me, and why I think I'm going to agree with it, it probably would have been a better system, is I think that I have a lot of faith in George Lucas as a creator, period, director, producer, anything. And I think he's great. And I think I can trust his opinion on this. And I think that if you were to ask him today, do you think you could have done a better job? Or do you think that the Star Wars movies would have been better, well received, even with what you had in mind? I know what you said when you talked to Cameron in that interview, but now in 2023, retrospectively, do you think that you could have done better than what Disney came up with 7, 8, and 9? I think his answer is yes. Privately, I think his answer is yes.
I don't want to assume what he thinks, but based on like those interviews and stuff, I would think he made better movies because they're his story, but he would say that the audience wouldn't have liked them as much as they liked TFA, which people saw as a safe movie. I don't think it is, but I mean, they killed Han Solo. But
similarly, what James was just saying, I think if you look at it from a different creator angle, if you said James Cameron sold Avatar to Disney and then they went on to make Avatar without him, I think he would say the same thing. He'd be like, well, those were my movies. Like, those were my things. And they took it in a different direction. I think
look at the Terminator movies after he left.
I think, I just think it's a general thing that anybody that puts time, passion, creative energy into something that they care about, the moment it doesn't become yours anymore and it goes to someone else, and then your ideas are thrown away. Like, think about like when you leave a job and you've set all the stuff up for the job, and then you leave the job, even a good, bad break, whatever. The next person in line takes the job and then undoes what you did or trashes it all. Like, there's a feeling of like, wait a second. So what I did didn't matter. And I think that's just human nature, that people have that feeling. So I can't blame George Lucas or necessarily not think that he doesn't feel that way. I think it's human nature to feel like, okay, but what is my legacy then? Because I had plans and we talked about those plans and you went away with those, like threw it in the trash, so to speak.
A good analogy to pair with that about the job is, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but I have. It's like when you move away from a house and then your family goes back to like see, I wonder what the old house looks like.
Oh, and they have done terrible things to it?
And I did that. We went back to Long Island and we looked at our old house and we're like, oh my God, they got rid of the pool and my basketball hoop's gone and they changed that. They got rid of that tree. I can't believe they got rid of that tree. And it doesn't belong to you anymore, but in your heart it does, because you have that memory of, I used to climb that tree. I swam in that pool, and these people just got rid of it.
Like when my sister had an apartment and sold it to this lady, and the lady took all the hardwood floors out and put carpet in, and my sister was like, I just put all those hardwood floors in.
Don't they just put carpet over the hardwood floor, though?
She ripped out the hardwood floor and sold the hardwood floor and then put carpet in.
That's wild. It's a wild move.
That's what I'm saying. But like, that's the stuff that, like, my sister was like, it's the idea that you put so much effort and time and thought into whatever that thing
that's
is.
Impossible. I don't know. Like, he is the ultimate Jedi because the attachment thing he talks about, like, if George Lucas was bitter and angry about what they were doing, he would be the Sith that he's saying, like, I told these stories for you not to have attachment.
Made the choice,
So it has to be so difficult, though, for him to do that.
It's on his face, though. If you,
oh yeah, he always looks sort of like, oh God,
he looks a little unhappy.
Which is why I love Josh Robert Thompson's impression of him. He doesn't like bitter, angry.
Oh, the like, idiots.
Yeah, he's like, bunch of idiots. Yeah. But and shout out to JRT, that guy rules. Hope he comes back on the pod one day.
Yeah, he was super funny.
I didn't expect this to be that long of a conversation. I think we're about 20 minutes in, but I think we sort of laid out what it could have looked like. And again, we're not sitting here saying like we knew better, because anyone could, anyone could go back and, say what could have been done differently about anything in life. But I'm thinking about that situation now, and I just feel like it would have made a lot of things a lot easier for people. And like, again, to be clear, I really do enjoy the sequel trilogy, but imagine not having the divisiveness of TLJ.
Or the people that just say, "Oh, it's not George's," regardless of what decisions were made.
Even if he made an episode 8 that people are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe he did that," you could still just be like, "Look, George's. Dude, he invented it.
Yeah,
he can do whatever the hell he wants." So,
and I think like
that alternate timeline is interesting to think about.
Sort of. And and it's interesting too, cause like I'm trying to think of examples where like in any case where you're handing off any sort of franchise like this, like which is better to do, let those original creators work with the new creators and sort of produce and kind of hand off that process, or is it always better to rip the Band-Aid off, set a hard line in the sand and be like, this is the new generation and none of the old creators are even involved? I think probably 10 times out of 10, the better option is like, having the creators be the people who worked on it before be somewhat involved in the new project, at least to some degree.
Yeah. And let's not discount the people. There are, I think, a bunch
there
of
are
who are glad that George Lucas didn't continue making the Star Wars movies because they felt like he lost his touch, and they probably think like there's no way he would have made a better Star Wars movie than in 2015 or 2017 than J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson did. There are fans who think that way. There are probably fans who are hearing me say that now saying like, well, they're nuts. But that's the whole, like everyone, there's all these different opinions and nuances to all this stuff. I'm just in thinking in general, not of terms of like what George Lucas's movie would have been like. I just think in general, that type of more overlapped transition would have really softened the landing and made set up Disney in a better light. Kathleen Kennedy, most importantly, George Lucas's exit, maybe more closure for him, saying like he got to finish his story. I just think if you look at all the people involved and then the collective in terms of fans receiving it, I think that probably in retrospect would have been the best way to go.
There's also so many avenues too. They could have had him direct episode 7 and then just produce and have other people direct 8 and 9.
You probably get a Steven Spielberg directed one finally if
maybe
he's stuck around. Maybe Ron Howard does one of the sequels instead of the Solo. Like it's just like the butterfly effect. It just everything would have shifted and changed around. But just thinking of the idea of it makes me think of a more peaceful time. But I still enjoy what we've been getting too. So either way. But any final things to add to this? Because I'm pretty much out of gas on it. But I don't know if you guys have any other angles to look at it from, and I'm sure our audience are itching and yelling to chime in, and so I'm curious to see what they think on Patreon, Discord, and of course comments on YouTube and Twitter and everywhere.
I would love to have an off the record convo and just be like, tell me what happened, tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
Even though he has no need to tell me anything. No, I feel like sometimes I look at these scenarios and I just want to understand what happened. Like just from a basic, like, just tell me what happened. So that I can have some peace with it, I guess.
How about this? If you could ask George Lucas one question, what would you ask him about this? Not like, so where's Yoda from? But like about this.
Do you regret selling Lucasfilm?
In general, do you regret selling it?
Yeah.
Interesting. I would have been more specific.
I was going to say
I love that question because that's a point
that pretty much encapsulates the entire conversation to me. Is like, it's something along the lines of like, do you think if you didn't sell it, you could have done something better for your legacy or the stories, just that for the sake of the movies, the story or whatever it is, you think you could have done something better, in your opinion? I think that it's all along those lines. And maybe George Lucas does the book route late in his life and just lays it all out in the book or something.
I mean, that could be in the works.
What did
I
J.W.
would-
Rensselaer say? He has a bunch of journals and stuff that no one will ever see.
Well, yeah, certainly the treatments for his movies and all that stuff. Well, I think my question would be a little more specific than yours, Lacey, and it would be, do you wish you held on 10 years more and made yours 7, 8, 9 and then sold it? Like, do you wish you waited a little longer to sell it? Because he was only 68, when he sold it. So,
I mean,
Kathleen Kennedy's 70. So,
the other aspect of it too is like it wasn't just like a Star Wars thing too. He was selling other properties as well, and a lot of that came from him deciding that he was retiring in general. You know what I mean? Because he's not making movies now. And if it was like one of those things where like we're talking about James Cameron, he like sells off Terminator, or I don't know, maybe there's a better example, but like when a creator sells off or disconnects themselves from one of their original pieces and then they continue to do other things, that's like, man, why did you sell it? Well, there's a little bit of an argument for why George sold it, because he sold everything and stopped doing everything. You know, it's like, oh man, it's like kind of a bummer, but like, does it all stem back from what I was saying at the beginning of the conversation? Like the prequels, did it really hit him that bad that he was like, you know what? I'm just done. I tried to do the Indy thing too, Indy 4. You know what? I just don't think people care about me anymore. And I hope that's not the case.
That's fair that very well could be the case. But I mean, either way, it happened, and then it happened how it happened, and now we are where we are. So I still am enjoying what we've gotten. It's just an interesting sort of alternate universe, alternate timeline look at what could have been. If it's like the almanac and Back to the Future just can change, things. So we hope everyone enjoyed that discussion and Will the Force and everything we talked about up at the top. Be sure to look out for Lacey's review of the new Delilah Dawson book, Rise of the Red Blade. Yes. So Lacey's going to give a review on that. It's going to be on the channel exclusively, and a nice little honest take on one of the latest Star Wars canon books. But thank you to everybody for listening, watching, and being a part of TRB. It means a great deal to us. We appreciate it very, very much. Lacey and James already told you where to go and how to get there. But if you are interested, please do check out our Patreon, because Ahsoka's coming up, and things are going to start ramping us forward from us here. And your support is always greatly appreciated. As far as me, you could find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We are doing Titanic, which will be out hopefully tomorrow. Very topical of late. James, how about you?
Twitter and Instagram, both at Myra Trunks. I guess technically Threads, if you want to come over and say hi there.
Threads. Yeah, Threads is huge. It's going to blow up like Hive.
It already did. It has 30 million people signed up. I am everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, etc. at Lacey Gilleran, and on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. To be fair, John, I do think that Threads has a much different game than Hive.
Hive was heinous. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Hive was
Threads
their own company hoping to get bigger, and this is Facebook saying we're opening up a new channel, and everybody who's already on Instagram immediately integrates into the other one that easily. It's just it will have more staying power, I think. But then again, there's like Google Plus and stuff that also failed. So
Google Plus. Google Plus.
I like seeing people sticking it to the rich man by signing up to join the other rich man's platform. It's a beautiful thing.
There you go.
But I'm there too, sort of. It's so tiring. There's so many platforms, but find us, because we'll be there as well, as always. But we'll also be with you as on schedule as of now, Wednesday night, with TRB Live this week. Just bumping it up one day. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you Wednesday night with another episode right here on the Resistance broadcast. See you around, kids.